Good morning. Appreciate you being here on this fairly brisk morning. We do want to make some announcement this morning regarding our high school students and our continued pathway forward in returning to a greater amount of instructional time in person for our brick and mortar students. You have heard and been part of being present for announcements regarding elementary, which is now back in 5 days a week at all grade levels, for additional announcements regarding middle school, which through this week is now back in all 3 grade levels 4 days a week, and we anticipate return after the Christmas break, the winter break, to 5 days a week with middle school students. This morning we want to talk a little bit about our high school return. Our high school return for after Christmas holidays and winter break holidays will begin moving towards greater in-person. Our high school students currently now attend 40% of their time in person. And we do some remediation and additional help opportunities for those students on Fridays. Following the holidays, beginning at the start of the second semester, which is actually the middle part of January. I believe specifically we'll begin this on January the 19th. We have a plan in place to increase that attendance from 40% to 75%. Right now, if you're a high school student in brick and mortar, you come to school 2 days a week. For example, you may be in a group that comes Monday and Wednesday. So beginning with this 75% plan, the start of the second semester, you'll attend Monday and Wednesday, and you and your group, your color group, remember these are color-coded, will attend one other day. So you might be Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday. You will also attend 3 out of every 4 Fridays. So obviously that's on a rotating basis. So you'll have 3 days of attendance during the week, set days. You already have 2, for example, Monday and Wednesday, or Tuesday and Thursday. You'll pick up a 3rd day that you currently are not attending. Then you will attend 3 out of 4 Fridays. So over a month's time, as a high school student, you would be in person, in attendance, 75% of the time. On any given day of attendance, 75%, right at 75% of our students would be present in every high school on any given day. So when we refer to this, we refer to it as a 75% plan. We considered a number of plans. This one is the one that gets most students back the largest amount of time. As you all will recall, in every circumstance where we have returned students in person more days, we follow the same protocols that we followed when we only had 25% of our students coming in person on any given day. That is, they maintain social distancing. That's 6 feet, or utilizing the plexiglass configurations that we had approved by Department of Health and Environmental Control, where 3 feet inside those configurations, wearing a mask, is equivalent to 6 feet of social distancing. We have consistently done that to protect the health and safety of our students and of our employees since we have returned during this COVID-19 pandemic. The other cornerstones of protecting students and faculty have been mask when you're not 6 feet, mask inside those protocols, frequent washing, sanitization of your hands, and we want people to stay at home if they do not feel well. We believe all of those factors have contributed to creating a safe environment for our students and our faculty to be present. And that is borne out by the statistics that we have related to quarantine and isolation inside our system among faculty, staff, and students. While those numbers have been rising, as have the numbers in the county and the state, they still remain well under the numbers in the county when proportioned to 100,000, utilizing the same methodology that DHET uses to analyze rate of isolation. DHET does not report quarantine data. We do report quarantine data. You can find it on our website. And that is one of the most challenging issues that we are currently dealing with. And that is the high number of students, but most importantly, the high number of employees quarantining. It is making it very difficult, increasingly difficult every day to ensure we can fully staff schools at the level they need to be to ensure not only instruction, but to ensure the protocols are being followed to keep students healthy and employees healthy. In fact, I would say to you without hesitation, this surge continues in the way it's in the manner it is in right now. Were we not getting out for the holiday break, really beginning with the end of the half day tomorrow, we likely would be having to close schools because of lack of employees. So it is very important to us, to our community, to our students, to our employees, that people follow the guidance that we're hearing from the medical professionals, locally from Prisma, from Bon Secours St. Francis, from DHET, about masking, about socially distancing, because the surge coming out of Thanksgiving doesn't appear to be peaking and dropping. It appears to be a continuing surge. We are very concerned that the similar repeat could occur coming out of Christmas. That might very well derail what we're talking about with you here today. But we want to make sure people had ample opportunity, parents and families had sufficient opportunity to be prepared for what we will do beginning the middle of January if we are in the environment that will allow us to do that. So our plan is going forward to bring back those high school students, 75%, beginning January the 19th. You might immediately ask, well, why did this take so long? And I think the reasons for that we've talked about before. High school is the most challenging group for us to have back present in a greater number for more days. Far more challenging than any other group. Challenging in that there are more high school students in a building. Those are our largest student populations throughout the district. High school students. The smallest high school is as large as our largest elementary. So that's challenging. Obviously, the physical size of high school students. Those high school students are adult size. Their physical size. The fact that they are, as evidence is beginning to show, more likely to carry this virus than younger students. That is a challenge. The class sizes at the high school level, there were more than 500 sections that had greater than 26 or greater number of students in it, which limits our ability to place those plexiglass configurations in classrooms. So in most cases in every building, we had to go room to room to lay out classrooms to accept those configurations. In some cases, principals and administrative staff in the local schools had to make schedule adjustments. There was a great deal of preparation that went into every one of these changes at the elementary, middle school level, but at the high school level, far more so than the other two levels, and that takes a longer period of time. The other issue is our high schools that are on a block schedule, they literally, every student in that school goes to a new schedule at the beginning of second semester. Their first semester courses are full and complete. At the end of the semester, they move to an entirely new schedule. It's another reason to be looking at the 19th rather than doing this immediately upon return from the Christmas holidays. So I can't say enough about our employees at the school level. teachers, administrative staff, counselors. You see some individuals behind me, the Assistant Superintendent for High School Leadership, Mr. Reimer, the Assistant Superintendent for Special Ed Services District-wide, Tracy Hogan, the Executive Director of Career and Technical Education, Eric Williams. We do not have a representative here this morning from our Facilities Department, but facilities, food service, transportation, the individuals you see behind me, all of those people have worked very diligently in order to ensure that we have provided for every concern and making sure that this plan can move forward in a way that protects our students, our staff, and our community. We know, without exception, that for most of our students, being in person is better. We can be more effective in working with them instructionally in person. We can be more effective in helping them with social and emotional issues in person. This greatly benefits our students. But it only benefits our students when we can move forward and do so in a manner that protects the health and safety of our employees and our students. We're fully confident that this does so. Again, I would urge all of us and urge our community to follow the advice that we hear from Prisma, that we hear from Bon Secours St. Francis, that we hear from DHEC, that we hear virtually nationwide from medical and public health professionals and experts to mask, to maintain social distancing, to do those things that minimizes spread so that we can continue to move forward with having students in person more frequently. This time, Mr. Waller, we'll take any questions that the media may have.
And Dr. Royster, we did have a bit of an audio issue on our Facebook Live at the beginning. I wonder if you could just recap the very beginning of your remarks, explaining just really the basic function of this 75% plan.
Okay, it basically functions, if you think back about how our high school students are in person now. They're there what amounts to 40% of the time. They're there 2 days a week. They're assigned to color groups that indicates their days of attendance. So, for example, you're a high school student, you come to school Monday and Wednesday, currently. Again, in January the 19th, you'll come Monday and Wednesday, like you have been doing. You'll pick up a third day. Say that day's Thursday. So now you'll come Monday, Wednesday, Thursday. Every week you'll come Monday, Wednesday, Thursday. Then on a rotating basis, you will come 3 out of 4 Fridays. Perhaps the easiest way to remember that would be if tomorrow, under the new schedule, you're at home doing e-learning, then you're going to be at school the next 3 Fridays. And if you've been at school 3 Fridays, the next one, you're going to be at home doing e-learning. And that e-learning will be either consist of live streaming from teachers or recorded video. And we certainly prefer the live streaming. In some cases, that's not the best case scenario. That's not always possible. But it would be in one of those 2 formats. Again, minimizing that time that they're at home. Over a month, as a high school student, you're going to be physically present 75% of the time. And our expectation for those students is that they will be present. It is critical not only on the part of the school to offer that opportunity, it is critical that students take advantage of that, and we certainly will be tracking that and coordinating that with parents to make sure that those students are there the number of days they need to be there. So again, we believe this is important for making up any deficit they may currently have. We know that we have a larger number of Fs than we ordinarily do in any given school year, and it's crucial. It's crucial at every grade level to do that, but it is certainly most critical for seniors graduating at the end of the year and for students at the high school level that they stay on track for a 4-year graduation, that we recover for these students and these students for themselves recover that knowledge that may have been missing and move those grades from an F to a passing status.
And that begins January 19th.
January the 19th.
Dr. Royster,
Yes, sir.
is there any sort of concern that the way this rotation would be, you have 3 of the 4 Fridays, is there any concern that that might present challenges, with kids learning in some of these classes, or if it kind of changes the way that the classes would be? Is there any kind of fear that could interrupt that flow?
It certainly does present some challenges. There is no model that doesn't present challenges. In fact, one of the advantages to this model, beyond it's the one that gets the largest number there the most frequently, the greatest amount of time, that it does reduce some of the challenges as far as teachers dealing across multiple platforms of learning. But yes, it's certainly going to be a challenge when you have a rotating group in. I think that will end up being a mix of opportunities that individual teachers will provide. That's a time to do some review and catch up in some cases for those days that they're not in place, and it may well be a mix of that and new material. But it certainly is challenging, and again, Tiger, there's just nothing in this environment that's not extremely challenging.
And is there also, you mentioned before, basically the surge from Thanksgiving.
Right.
If that were to continue, and I'm wondering if there'd be a threshold too, but if that were to continue for the Christmas break, there's a chance that this may never even happen for high school students, right? That increased return to 75%.
I would phrase it just a little bit differently. There is certainly a likelihood that it might need to be postponed. It might affect its implementation, because we are obviously very concerned, as I mentioned earlier, what's happening right now with this continued surge. If we were in school next week rather than on break, I feel very confident we'd be having to shut some schools down because not having a sufficient number of adults present to operate them, keeping in place the safety and supervision of students that we need to have. So if this surge continues and increases, and that wave continues to grow and doesn't moderate, it will be very challenging returning after the Christmas break. Now, we'll obviously continue to monitor throughout that 2-week period the number, most especially the number of employees having to quarantine and the number of being isolated. It's a little more difficult for us to monitor the students during that period of time, although we will continue to monitor them. We have asked that principals, department heads continue to take information from their employees, continue to send that in to the contact points at the district level. So all during the break, we'll be tracking that to see if we need to make any modification. If it is like Thanksgiving, what would appear to be the likely scenario is the first few days of return fairly low. Then it begin to increase, beginning about day 4 after the return from Thanksgiving. So we believe at this point it would not be prudent to make any sort of decision about how we're going to come back after Christmas holiday, other than we plan to come back just like we're going out, that is following the plans we have in place. Elementary 100% in person 5 days a week. Middle school they would be picking up their 5th day, but we would still be 2 weeks away from the implementation of this high school plan.
Dr. Royster, given that surge that's happening right now and with it potentially affecting school operations, why is the district choosing to make this announcement now that they're going to be almost doubling the amount of in-person participation for high school students?
We want people to have the opportunity to know what our path forward is. And I think we've been very open and honest about the fact that could be derailed by this continued surge. But we want parents, students, and our teachers and other employees to know this is what's coming, so you have a period of time to prepare for that. Now, most particularly, that takes more preparation on the part of faculty at the high school. Probably a lot more preparation for them to make the shift than for a student to make the shift. But even students may need to make some changes in what they're doing. We have students that at the high school level have part-time jobs. Some of them are now working during what would traditionally be their school day. Well, now they're going to have to be at school on that Thursday, for example. They've been coming Monday and Wednesday. Now they have to be there on Thursday. So there needs to be a period of time to make adjustments that need to make. Right now, in all of our statistical analysis within the system, the risk ratio, the attack rate, calculations that our people in research and evaluation make, our risk rate at the last posting was still about half of the risk rate in the county. So it remains safer inside the system than outside the system. Right now, that biggest challenge is the number of employees we have having to quarantine and having to isolate, and a challenge in running the system. Now, should that risk rate, that gap begin to close and it be as risky to be inside the system as outside, that also could cause us to rethink where we are.
And Dr. Royster, I know you mentioned this. This does not impact virtual program students, correct?
It does not impact virtual program students in any way. Of course, when we talk about virtual program students, those are students whose parents have committed to them to be virtual 100% of the time up to the entire school year.
And given that, and I think you touched on this, but saying that, that risk is higher outside of the system rather than inside the system, wouldn't that point to the surge actually getting worse during the Christmas break versus better?
I'm sorry, I missed the last part because a car went by.
Given what you just said, that the risk is higher outside of the system as opposed to inside the system, wouldn't that indicate that the surge would get worse after winter break as opposed to getting better?
If we as a community don't do the things we're being asked to do, I believe you are quite possibly correct that it is getting worse. It's continuing to worsen. And if we don't make some changes, I don't believe that trend is going to reverse itself on its own.
What is the threshold? How many staff can be out until school or district needs to shut down?
There is no magic number.
I'm not asking for a specific number, but
Right.
certainly you have a ballpark.
Well, it's not possible even to give you a ballpark. We look every day at the percentage of absences in the school. We look at the number of unfilled substitutes. Then we have conversation. The assistant superintendents, I mentioned to you Mr. Reimer's back here, high school leadership. The assistant superintendent for middle school leadership, and the 3 for elementary schools. They're constantly communicating with their principals, because the next question is, those absences not covered by a substitute, are you able to cover them with an appropriate employee in your building? If you cannot, then we send some people from the district. We have a limited number, but we send some of them. If that won't solve the issue, then we're going to have to shut the school down. So it varies from school to school, because different schools have differing numbers of personnel. For example, a Title I school has more personnel than a school that's not Title I of the same size. High schools and middle schools, because they're much larger schools, they have higher numbers of support personnel than elementary schools do. So it is literally an individual decision made on a school-by-school basis on a daily basis. The beginning point of that is when we look at a percentage out, and we see a percentage that runs high, and then we look at the unfilled, and that number is very high, then it requires a conversation.
What is that percentage? You said there's a high percentage. What is that concerns you?
Any percentage over 10% causes you to look then how many are unfilled. It's the number unfilled. That has far more to do with it than the percent that are out. It's the number that you can't reasonably cover.
As a district, what is the number at that point?
There is not a number at that point.
15% of the district is out when you have school?
It doesn't have anything to do with what percent it is. We're making a decision on a school-by-school basis. We might have one school closed. We might have 3 schools closed. We might have more than that closed.
You said that if this continued into next week, that you might not have school because so many people would be out. That tells me that there is some number that you're looking at next week on trends, correct?
That is almost what I said. What I said was, if this surge continued as it is now into next week, it is very likely that we would not be able to to operate schools with the proper number of people in place to provide adequate safety supervision. That would still be a school-by-school decision. So it still comes down to a school. If the risk ratio If the attack rate inside the system begins to equal that in the community, that might be a reason to do something system-wide. Might be a reason. Depends on what that number is. And there is no, before you ask that next question, there is no magic number.
Okay,
If the number hits 1, if the risk ratio inside the system is equal to outside the system, that would certainly be like a likely trigger point.
How are you guys determining infections in school? How far back before the positive test are you contact tracing?
We follow the DHEC guidelines for that, and I'll have to get you that information. We strictly follow the DHEC guidance for contact tracing. And we do a more extensive contact tracing than probably any place you would find in the community except the healthcare providers.